Now you hit the right button. Good afternoon. I'm Rebecca Garber with the School District of Janesville. I am a special ed program support teacher and transition specialist. And today we have the pleasure of hearing from Shayna Ratzburg, who was the transition specialist in Janesville before she moved on to this position. So, Shayna, go ahead and tell us all about PTPs.
Hi, first I'm going to apologize because I have been sick and I am coming back from not having any voice yesterday. So I'm a little bit better today, but you may see me drink some of my tea just to kind of help my voice as we go through this. I am one of the transition assistants, transition specialists, or technical assistants transition specialists at the Transition Improvement Grant, otherwise known as TIG. And so today we're just going to kind of talk about a general focus of what is the purpose of the post-secondary transition plan. We may do a little bit of digging into some components of it, and then we'll talk about some tools that can help families, transition partners, students, and schools all be kind of working together towards that post-secondary transition plan. So first, why are we even talking about the PTP? Well, it's a common perception that it's just another form or just another thing we have to fill out when we're doing our IEPs. But the reality is, although it is required as part of the IEP, it is meant to really be a roadmap for life after high school, not just a compliance task. So really, if it's done well, the PTP is going to connect the students' goals, their services, their courses, all to what their outcomes are going to be upon exiting school. So it should all be connected. Oops, it's not letting me. Oh, now I went too far. Okay. So next, what is the PTP? The PTP is a part of the IEP, like I said previously. It's written within the IEP team, and which should include the student when a student is 13, turning 14, and then during that time frame of that IEP. There are 8 components to the PTP. One is the student invite. Student is required to be invited. The age-appropriate transition assessments, which we'll talk about in correlation with the measurable post-secondary goals. Annual goals, it needs to be connected to the IEP's annual goals. The transition services or the pre-employment transition services. And then the outside agencies, course of study, and age of majority. Today, we're really going to focus more on that post-secondary goals as well as transition assessment that goes along with it, transition services, and then the course of study. We're talking about outside agencies or transition partners throughout each of those components. So first, what is the purpose of the PTP? It's really intended to be student-centered. So the visual on the page kind of talks about how the PTP is like driver's education for adult life. If adults do all the talking, all the deciding, and all the planning, students won't learn how to steer. And when graduation comes or exit comes, it can feel like you're just being handed the keys without any practice. And that kind of represents that first driver who crashed into the sign. But when the students are able to reflect on their goals, share what matters most to them, and participate in planning, they practice decision making, they build confidence, and then they learn how to navigate their own future and they become their own independent driver. So when we're talking about the PTP, it's really intended to help students identify a vision for their future in education and training, employment, and then independent living if appropriate. It's also used to support student voice, so students can understand and share their strengths as well as their goals and any needs for support that they might have. And finally, it also is to align their current services, their transition services to their future outcomes or their future goals. So we talk about what services can be provided now rather than later, who can work and help provide those services, and then what courses or experience does the student need before exiting to help them be successful. So really the key takeaway is that the PTP should not be written about the student, but instead with the student. So the first part we want to kind of touch base on or dig a little deeper into is the post-secondary transition or the post-secondary goals, and those define the destination. So really it's asking, sorry, What will the student do after high school? And again, I talked just on the last slide, these goals are talking about education and training and employment for everyone, and then independent living if it's appropriate for the student. What makes a strong post-secondary goal? A strong goal needs to be based on the student's strengths, interests, and preferences, and it should focus on life after school. So these goals shouldn't be for what the student's going to do during high school. These goals are intended to be after the student exits the school system. And then they should be updated as the student grows and changes. So this shouldn't be a stagnant goal that goes continues throughout the years. It can change as the student changes their interests and their aim for after when as an adult. And then these goals should also be based on transition assessments. They shouldn't just be guesses. Okay, they really should be informed by transition assessments. Transition assessments can help identify interests, they can help identify strengths, skills, support needed. They can help identify work preferences, such as inside, outside, with people, independently. It can help identify learning styles. And assessments don't have to necessarily all be formal. They can involve formal assessments, but they can also include informal assessments like an interview or an observation. It can include assessments from input from families, such as inventories or some feedback that they might have from work-based either in the home or maybe in the community. And then finally, the tools like what we provide at Transition Improvement Grant, which is the Wisconsin Transition app that I'm going to talk about later, can really allow for the students, the families, and the educators to reflect on the different goals and kind of some of those components within that application. The next part we really kind of want to review is the transition services, and that really is how we get the students to their post-secondary goals. They are aligned to the PREATs, so the pre-employment transition services that are often used with the Division of Workforce, or I can't talk today. DVR, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is a part of the DWD or the Department of Workforce Development. There we go. And so they align. We have 6, they have 5, but this allows us to align our service supports with our outside agencies, such as DVR. So they were intentionally aligned to match with those. There are the 6 areas that we talk about within our PTP is job exploration counseling services, work-based learning experiences, post-secondary and higher education related services, work readiness, social and independent living skills services for the home, work readiness, social and independent living skills services for community. So really the difference between those last two are one is for the home and one is for the community. And then finally, instruction on self-advocacy. So those are the 6 areas that the school will look at when they're creating their PTP. I have linked, and if you want to add the link into the chat, Tim, or I can do it. It's to I can actually show it here. Is that showing now? Did it switch or are you still,
Yes,
okay.
there it is. Thank you.
Yep. So I will link this. It's linked in. It is the printout of all of those individual transition services. So it's really helpful for families to look at ahead of time, for any outside agency or transition partner to look through so that they can understand what the different services are to help match them to what their student or their students' goals are. So they're broken down, but they're all in one location for you to actually have a print copy if you would like, versus, having to just discuss them randomly. So this is a nice resource to have going into an IEP meeting. I got to go back to. All right. And then for these, the transition services really should be coordinated activities. They support that movement, so they shouldn't continue to be the same transition services year by year. They should be growing as the student grows, they should be adjusting and helping them get closer to their goals. And so it kind of is an ongoing record of the things that students are working on to get them closer to their goals. and they should be building skills that are needed for adult success. Why this matters, why these services matter is for the families, it shows a real plan for what their goal is. It also clarifies to the family who will be providing the services, and where the and what will the services be, as well as who will be as providing those services. For educators, the transition services are really important to keep those services aligned to their goals as well as their IEP goals, and it prevents random or disconnected activities for the student. And then for transition partners, the transition services in particular are very important to figure out where outside supports can fit in. How can they be working together instead of duplicating? And then it promotes that coordinated planning. It has them work together instead of separately. So that's kind of the connection with transition services. Sorry. The next component that I really kind of want to put a focus on is of the course of study, which is aligning to the future. So these are the classes that the students taking now as well as in coming years. So it's really important to focus on, are the students' courses helping them get towards their goals? Courses of studies should reflect long-term goals. Those courses should be reflecting what that student's post-secondary goal is. So this should, again, everything is kind of aligning. That post-secondary goal is driving those transition services, which can then help drive those courses of study to make sure that they all align. The course of study should be creating those skills or building those necessary skills that the student might need to go into the post-secondary goal they have. And it's going to support that entry, whether it's into post-secondary education, whether it's into specified training, or whether it's directly into employment. Why course alignment matters. For example, if a student's goal is technical training, we need to be making sure that they're taking the technical or career and technical education courses that align with what that student wants to do, and it's not just random. If their goal is competitive employment, are we allowing them to participate in different work-based learning? Are they getting the skills needed to when they enter that workforce? And then if there are independent living goals that the student has, are they receiving that instruction somewhere within their daily schedule? And which courses would they be receiving the instruction in? And then courses sorry, align with their goals, then school becomes purposeful for the student and there's more buy-in from the student. They see the relevancy to their learning and they can connect what they're doing now with what they want to do for the future. And then families can understand what the pathway is that their child or their student is taking to get to their next step or their goal after high school. So it'll align that pathway and make it clear to everybody, including the family. Those were the three key areas I kind of just wanted to explain in depth a little bit more about the PTP. But then we want to talk about, why does the PTP matter to families? So the role of the PTP for families is really creating clarity about the students' goals after they exit school. So sometimes you'll come in and the student has one goal and the school has one goal and the family has one goal. This PTP helps align those goals and gets the team talking about the different perspectives and working together to kind of create that goal, that the student and the whole team is on board with, and they all have understanding of each other's perspectives. It encourages that shared decision making and encourages input from other people. So it's not something that's just discussed one time, and then done. um, it's just discussed one time and then put away. This is encouraging different people to share their information, talk about what they can help provide, make decisions together, and then we can get input from other views that might be from outside of the school. Like we're talking about an employment goal, and then DVR might be able to contribute some of what they're working on with their DVR counselor or their job developer that can align and coordinate. It also helps reduce those last minute surprises when a student exits school. This helps prepare the family and the student for what comes next. And so when they turn 18, there's not a surprise about transfer of rights. That's been discussed as part of the PTP. Or if a student wants to go to a four-year college, as they're exiting their senior year, it's not a surprise what prerequisites they wanted to know or about where to apply for FAFSA, student aid, things like that. So these all kind of align that so that at the end of their students' school K-12 schooling, they're not surprised or not unaware of things that come next. And along with that, the PTP can really help families understand timelines to when things need to be done. So some of those pathway questions, options, what are the different options my student has? And then what adult services or supports exist after the student exits school. So they're able to hear that information early and be able to ask questions and talk about it as a part of the PTP. Why the PTP matters to educators? Well, first and foremost, it encourages that student's voice and advocacy within their IEP. It gives them a point in the IEP that the student can feel confident sharing and leading as an entry point for the student. It also allows the student's voice to be heard through the whole entire team so that it's not just the teachers, it's not just the parents. The IEP is about that student. It gives that student voice. It allows the team or the educators to align those IEP goals with those post-secondary goals and outcomes. So there should be a direct line from what the student's working on as part of their IEP to how that's going to impact what their goal is after school. So it kind of aligns that whole pathway. It also helps guide those course of study decisions. So when a staff member is helping or a family or counselor is helping with a student to plan for their course of study, the PTP can help guide that. It can talk about if a student's goal is to enter a trade, are they taking the correct career and technical education or CTE courses that would help align that student to get to what their goal is. It also encourages real life, real world learning experiences. So it lets the student apply some of those transition skills to real world application to allow them to get that practice while they're still in school. It helps the school or the educators keep their transition work intentional. It's not just we're working on this transition service, because it's in this course. It's this transition service directly aligns with what the student's goal is, and this is how we're going to connect them. And then again, it encourages that collaboration with the student, collaboration with the family, collaboration with those outside transition partners. It gives them an opportunity and a venue to be able to do that collaboration. So why the partners or why the PTP matters to transition partners? Again, it creates a clear picture. Everybody's seeing that same picture. And then it allows the students' goals to be consistent. They're not working on one goal through the school and a different goal through DVR or an adult long-term care or a children's long-term. They're working together. It helps agencies prepare for appropriate supports. If the outside agency knows what the student needs, what they're getting for support during school, it helps them prepare and work together to make sure those are in place when a student exits. It clarifies roles and responsibilities. That helps eliminate some of the duplicated services. It helps that the student can get more targeted services, and then it prevents those gaps. So if the outside agencies or the transition partners are working with the school, connecting directly to that PTP, that can help eliminate some of those gaps as the student exits school and enters adult. And when transition partners are engaged early, it helps referrals happen on time. Again, eliminating that gap in services. Services then become coordinated, and then students experience a smoother transition as they move to adult systems. So a nice way to look at the PTP is that it becomes a shared document, not just a school document. So it's shared amongst the partners and it's used to help drive all of their work. It's that starting point. A note on that is in order for outside transition partners to be invited to the IEP, there is written permission that has to be given from the parent or the family to allow the school to invite them. And then the school can invite them, but also any family can choose to invite an outside transition partner to the IEP themselves. But that needs to be done to be a part of the IEP team. So that is noted when we're talking about transition partners. I am sorry, my cough is getting worse the more I talk. So that's kind of why it's important. One of the tools that I really want to share and talk about is the Wisconsin Transition app that Transition Improvement Grant or TIG has created. It was just redone I think it was released in January. Does that sound right, Rebecca? No, at beginning of February. It was just released. We took a lot of feedback from families, from students, from educators that the former app was very word based, very language based. And so they wanted to make it a little more user friendly, a little bit more engaging, a little bit more visual, back it up with some videos, things like that. So they have redone the app. The one thing to note is it's no longer available on Google Store or on iTunes. It is a web-based app, so you have to access it through the web link. I have created the Wisconsin transition. If you and I can share this link, this will take you to the TIG page that contains that transition app. And on the bottom of that, there are also supporting resources. So I wanted to make sure that you could have that. I'm going to just drop it in right now. You could have that linked in, but I also want to show you the direct link to I just shared the information for that page on the TIG website. But if we go back out maybe to the demo link, this specifically takes you to the demo version. So it's not collecting data for a student, but it allows us to go through it and look at it. If you were to go into the live link, you can get to this demo. I'll show you in a little bit how to get to the demo, but I link directly to the demo in here just to save some confusion because there is nothing indicating whether you're on the demo or not once you get into the app. And I'll take that and put it in there too. Gives me a second to rest my throat. All right. So the app, if you see it, it looks more kind of game-based or a little bit more visual. And then it kind of explains what it is. The language is all directed to the student. So even if it's a parent or educator helping the student complete this, the language is directed towards the student. There is, you can't see it because I'm viewing, but in this corner, there is a accessibility tool that you can use to have it read to students. It allows you to have different accessibility. I could maybe get it to, it's underneath. Oh, here, I can move that. No, I can't. It keeps going back. I can't get to it because it's covered up by a tool on my sharing of my screen. But if you click in that, you can see the different accessibility options available, including different languages. And there, thank you. Once you get it, the next screen tells you how to use the app. Okay. And then at the end, you can email the plan to yourself and anyone supports you. So if you're a student or family that is completing this, you can email it to, say, your case manager. Or if you're completing this with a transition partner, you can email it to, the student can email it to their case manager and their parents. So you can email this to whoever it's important to be shared with once they're done. Or you can print a copy and bring it to the IEP, which is a great way for them to share their input as well. When you get started, you can pick that if it's the student, the parent, family, or the educator teacher. If you were to click on the educator teacher, it's going to give you that link again to that demo right there. But if you're helping a student complete it, it's suggesting that you go back to student and select student. So if you're the one completing it, but it's the student's voice, you're doing it together, you would pick the student. That same thing would go to the parent or family. If it's the student's voice and you're working on it together, go from the student's perspective. But if it's just you and you want your input connected to it as a parent or family, you can choose parent or family as well. They pick their age. Depending on what age they pick, it's going to give them information on the bottom that talks about what that age entails. So if you see it can, if you select 14, talks about that this is when you're first going to need to be in, or must be invited to the IEP meeting, and it's going to the first year that you're going to start to make that plan. If I were to pick 17, it talks about that you're going to talk about how my rights will change to when I become a legal adult at 18. It will remind you that it should include the classes needed for to graduate and then your steps. So it kind of talks, each age talks a little bit differently as to what their goal is for, what's included. So
Can
we're
you
going to,
click on 21? I just want to see what it says.
yep.
Thank you.
Mhm. I'm going to go back to being 16. All right. Then you're going to talk about what grade you're in. Again, in this case, the student's going to be in 10th grade. And then you move next. I attend my individualized education program, IEP team meetings. Yes, tells you awesome, that's great. You're participating. That app talks about your goals. It says no, it's okay, but this is a chance for for your team to find out about your goals, interests. And then if you don't have an IEP, it kind of directs them to check with their educator and or family. And even if they don't have one, they can still use the app to think about their future and start planning. So I'm gonna participate. I'm not gonna go through this whole thing because I'm gonna let you, but I do want to share a few of the different updates. I share my IDs and speak up during my IEP meeting. You can say yes. Again, it's gonna say way to go. No, it's gonna talk about where you can start. So there's words of encouragement throughout. And then it talks about what do you need to help reach your goals. And you can think about what you need now and what you need in the future and pick all that apply. Each of these I's give a little bit more information for the student. So for example, keeping myself physically and mentally healthy, that means am I taking care of my body and my mind so I can do my best? Or explaining my disability and supports, that means I'm helping others understand what I need to succeed. So it kind of gives a little bit more, a little bit of an explanation for each of those I's as to what those mean. So I'm going to need some help speaking up for myself, leading or taking part, and explaining my disability. Skills I'm good at that will help me succeed. They give some examples, but you can talk through with the student. This might be something that helps the discussion with the student ahead of time. So what are some skills that I'm good at? Making friends. I'm just going to put one because I want to move on, but the student can put them in there themselves. You can again use word or speech to text in there to complete it. Then it's going to move on to let's explore what kind of job or career interests me. And there are these are based on the career pathways that are used. And so you can again you can click on the I to find out more information about what type of jobs might fit under there. So I'm thinking about, let's see, I'm thinking about construction, and agriculture. And if you notice that as I clicked on those two, and you got to scroll down a little bit depending on your screen, but there are videos that popped up that talk about those careers. And so I'm not going to because we don't have it set up right. But if I were to click on this, it's a very short video. I think it's like 2 minutes, if that, and it talks about the different careers under those career pathways. So that's another way for students to get more information. Take the time to stop and say, okay, I clicked on agriculture, but yeah, that's not what I want to do. Or I can learn a little bit more about maybe I'm interested in education. Or healthcare, and I'm gonna click on that and it's gonna tell me some more. Okay, and then once they learn more, I know after watching that, I don't want healthcare, so I got rid of it. And then what kind of job do you want after school? Again, you've just watched that video. You can click on information to learn more. I think I want to go into construction, so I'm going to click that. And then which classes am I good at or would like to take? So I want to take some computer science. I like music. I want some tech ed. I like math. Okay, so I'm going to put some of those in there. Now, to reach my goal, what am I going to need help with? Okay, so these are some of the things that I might need help with. And if you were to connect, they do connect to some of the transition services. They're not all the transition services, but they are some of them. So it gets that conversation started. So I want to get some help. I want to learn about DVR because I've heard people talk about it and I don't know what it is. I want to find out what I need to get a job. Um, I want to visit some job training. So I'm going to click those. And then I want to keep learning. So how do I think I want to do, I don't want to go to school. So I think I want to do on the job training or I want to work. And that would include like an apprenticeship. Then I could use some help with, so it gives me some more ideas for help about job training and education. I'm going through this quick. I want to find a job. You can say yes if they want to find a job while you're in school. If they say no, that's okay. And then you can, so it talks again about some of those options afterwards. Do I have a job, currently have a, do I have a volunteer or paid job? No, it says no worries. Move on. Paying attention to the time, I don't know. And then where do you want to live? And again, there's information more. Um, I would not recommend putting NA, but I'm going to for time's sake. And then I talk about these are some of my independent living skills that I do. So I don't,
You're good on time, Shayna. It's
okay, good.
4:36, so
Okay, good. So I already communicate with others. I do some things around the house and I'm in some community activities. So I'm going to click those. But I need more help with managing my money, um, understanding my rights, and understanding tools and technology. And then I'm going to say I'm in FFA. I'm interested in learning more about, let's say, help me out, guys. What's something I'm interested in learning more about? I'm going to say baseball. I'm going all over the place here. Huh. What activities do I like to do in my free time? I play video games. Are there adults in your family, school, or community that you are close to and help you? And it gives some examples. If you say yes, or you can say no, either option. Say yes. And then it asks you who are the adults you are close to. Let's say Rebecca, since she's on with me.
aw.
Is there anyone you would like to get support from? So maybe it's DVR I'm looking to get some support from, or youth apprenticeship. And then this is where you create the email. So I'm gonna just send it to me. If I can. Um, the put Janesville. Yes, I live in Wisconsin. And then at the end, you can either email the PDF or you can view the PDF. So we're just going to view it. And as you see, it talks about my age, my grade, what day I did this, talks about being invited. Then it talks about, it answers, so it provides all of those answers into a nice form that can be shared with the team to help create the PTP. So it's a starting point. It's not taking the place of, but it's kind of that starting talking point to get that conversation started with that student, that family, the partners at that IEP so you can work together. And it's not being, again, being done about them, it's being done with them. Boom. Any questions about that app? Because that was the part I wanted to really show a lot about because it is new. Does anybody have any current questions?
We're a small enough group, you're free to unmute and ask your questions, or you can put them in the chat and we'll be sure to get them asked for you.
I don't have a question, but I have a statement. I really like the way they formatted the new app. I do think with some of our students who, especially are slower processors or struggle with reading, I could see it taking, like, if, for example, if it were a class activity and a self-contained self-advocacy class or thinking something along those lines, it could take a couple class periods. But my understanding is that it will save your progress as long as you don't clear your cache. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yep. So if you're in your Chrome browser and you stop mid completion, as long as you don't clear your cache, the next time you come in, it should resume where you were at. So if there's no save button per se, but as long as you don't clear out your cache before you resume back to it, it should be saved automatically. It's an auto save within um, that application. However, if you clear your cache, it does clear all of the data and information in it. Huh.
I
So,
think it would be really helpful for students to really take the time to think about some of the questions on there.
mhm. Yep. And there is on that page that I shared, there is a paper version of it in case you want to have a paper version to discuss with the student prior to completing it so that they have a little foreshadowing of what some of the questions are. So that is also an option as
Are
well as,
you okay with showing us that? How to get to that?
yep. So I shared the link in there, but it's on our Wisconsin. So if you go onto the Transition Improvement Grant and you go under Self-Advocacy Guidance, there's a Wisconsin Transition App page, which is what I brought you to with that link. And this is the new version. There is still the old version available if there's anybody who prefers that, but that will be discontinued after June 30th. And then here is how to use it for students, how to use it for families, how to use it for educators. And then there is that app, that paper application that you can then click on and it downloads up, and I'm going to have to, hopefully it'll show up for you. It might come up in a different location for me. Yeah, it didn't show for you, did it?
No,
It's a Word doc, so it came up in a different location for me, but it's word for word through that what the questions are.
it would be
So,
nice though. I feel like some of the information things you can click on in the videos, especially, you'd miss out on all that. So,
yep, yep. I would say it's probably like foreshadowing some of those questions that are open-ended. That might be where it's helpful to talk about some of those open-ended questions so the student isn't like they have some preparation to be able to come up with their ideas ahead of time.
yeah.
Um, so those are the resources that support it. Let me get back in here. And really, I just kind of want to bring us all back together and talk about that this is the PTP is really shared ownership. The students' ownership of it is sharing their goals, their preferences, making sure their voice is heard. The families have ownership over providing insight, support, and advocating for their child. The educators show ownership through guidance, through teaching and connecting those transition services to those goals of the student. The transition partners share ownership when appropriate by supporting those adult transition planning. So they're helping to do that next step. So it's shared ownership. It's although it's part it should be it's a part of the IEP and in the same manner it should be shared ownership like the IEP team is and everybody's voice should be heard. So finally, in closing, the goal of the PTP is really successful transition. That is if the PTP is done well, it's preparing students for real life. It builds direction, it builds collaboration, and it builds readiness. So that's all I have. If there's any questions, if you want to stop the video or the recording, Tim, it's up to you.
There is a comment in the chat. Are
Okay.
you able to see the chat? I didn't know if you just wanted to respond to that while we're recording or not.
I hold on, I can't. I lost you. My app goes on to the other side, so I'm trying to
Right,
make it
no problem. Well,
bigger.
go feel.
I'm getting there. I'm getting
Okay.
there. All
I was going
right.
to say we could also stop sharing if you wanted to, unless you plan to go back.
No, I can't get to it. I can't find it.
Okay, I can read it to you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so it's just somebody attending said just did this on Friday. It was a great layout to get kids thinking. My daughter left halfway through, so I went back to the beginning to enter as a parent. I was disappointed that I couldn't specify that I was saying what I think she would say and that she wasn't taking part. However, I thought it was brilliant how you could enter the answers in an easy way and have the PTP all set up at the end.
Okay. When you did the report, did it say it was the parent that was completing it? Because that might be a way to say that it's the parent's voice versus the student's voice. Well, I didn't see I have to look at the report.
Yeah, she said she went back to the beginning to enter as a parent, so I'm assuming.
Okay. Okay. And then that would show that it's the parent's voice, and you can always also include that in an email to the team if you're emailing it or when you bring it to the team as well. So,
Well, and with that, I like your idea. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and then people can feel free to take themselves off mute and ask any other questions that they might have.